Let's now bring you our top story about the protests that have engulfed the United States. Mass protests continue across the U.S. for the sixth consecutive night over the killing of an unarmed black man named George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer in Minneapolis. Let's get you some of the latest updates on what is happening on ground in the United States. Now, what began as a peaceful demonstration in the city of Minneapolis has now transformed into a wave of outrage, sweeping a politically and racially divided nation. The map on your screen right now shows the extent of the demonstrations across the country that have now spread across multiple cities in the United States. As of now, at least 40 American cities have imposed a curfew, with National Guard being called in and mobilized in 15 states and even Washington, D.C. More than 2,564 people have been arrested in more than 12 U.S. cities over this weekend. Protesters continue to demand for all the officers involved in George Floyd's death to be charged. And currently, only one officer, Derek Chauvin, who was the one kneeling on Floyd's neck, has been charged with third-degree murder. Beginning with the capital of Washington, D.C., protesters were seen clashing with police officers right in front of the White House. A nighttime curfew has also been imposed in the capital, with Washington mayor calling for the National Guard to support the police. Let's now move over to California, where Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency in Los Angeles County. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Los Angeles to express their anger, and more than 530 people were arrested after these protests turned violent in downtown Los Angeles. On the other side of the coast, in New York, protesters staged a peaceful demonstration in the Times Square, taking a knee in silence. The protest organizers urged the crowds to remain peaceful, but this is just one picture of the protests in New York. In fact, in a polar opposite picture, two New York police vehicles drove into protesters blocking streets in Brooklyn. The video on your screens right now shows a police vehicle approaching the crowds with sirens blaring, and protesters were heard screaming, and some even climbed onto one vehicle after it stopped. But this is not the only example of police brutality, ironically being showcased at demonstrations protesting the same. In Denver, a protester was shot with a pepper bullet while filming the police at a scene of protests. Public eye. But the U.S. president did not stop tweeting, launching an attack against the Democrats and anti-fascist group Antifa. In a stark contrast, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden visited the scene of an anti-racism protest in the state of Delaware. And in a tweet, Biden said, and I quote, "We are a nation in pain right now, but we must not allow this pain to destroy us." This tweet shows a picture of him speaking to a black family at the Cordon site where protesters had gathered. Now, for more on this, William Denslow gets us this ground report about what's happening in New York.
That's the message that's been reiterated by New York's State Governor Andrew Cuomo. Speaking of the weekend, he said enough is enough and it shouldn't take this long in the United States to end basic discrimination. That was the very strong word from Governor Cuomo. But we've heard from here in New York City, the Mayor Bill de Blasio, who said that while there is legitimate grievances and the images of George Floyd's death is reiterated and really translated around the world, as you rightly say, but the message from Mayor de Blasio is that anger shouldn't be vented at individual police officers going about their day-to-day trying to serve their communities. Instead, it should be that anger should be pivoted towards those in power, those that make the decisions and can change the institutions that the police officers serve. But of course, we've also heard from the president in recent days saying that what we're seeing in terms of protests in places like Minneapolis and other pockets around the country, that it's moving towards looting, using that kind of rhetoric, saying that it's moved beyond honouring the memory of George Floyd. So a very strong narrative coming from the president as we move further and further days after the death of George Floyd.